The Russo brothers are back, and they're bringing Robert Downey Jr. with them. But not as Iron Man, as Dr. Doom. Why? Well, after years of declining box office returns, mixed critical reception, and a general sense that the MCU has lost its way in the post-Endgame era, Marvel Studios is returning to the people who delivered their biggest successes. I'm going to break down everything I can find about this, work out what it means for the future of the MCU, and ask the big question: can Avengers Doomsday save the Marvel Cinematic Universe? The Russo brothers' impact on the MCU can't be overstated. After starting with Captain America: The Winter Soldier in 2014, they went on to direct Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. Those 4 films collectively grossed over $6 billion worldwide. Let me repeat that, $6 billion. Avengers Endgame alone made almost $2.8 billion. Briefly becoming the highest-grossing film of all time before Avatar reclaimed the title after cheating with a re-release. So, the Russos aren't just successful directors, they're box office titans who fundamentally shaped the MCU during its most successful period. But what's really interesting is that at first, they were dead set against coming back to the MCU. So, what changed? According to Joe Russo, it was all about having a good idea. In an interview, Joe Russo said they didn't have a story or good way in. Then Steve McFeely, who co-wrote Endgame, called and said, "I have an idea." Whatever that idea was, it was good enough to bring back directors who were completely done with Marvel. After Endgame, the Russos moved on to other projects through their production company, Agbo, including Everything Everywhere All at Once, which won Best Picture, Cherry, starring Tom Holland, and The Gray Man for Netflix. But the thing is, while they were successful producers, their post-Marvel directorial efforts haven't done all that great. Cherry received mixed reviews, and The Gray Man, despite a massive budget, failed to make any impact. I mean, have you heard of them? Their most recent film for Netflix, The Electric State, also got lukewarm reactions at best. So, are they coming back because they had an amazing idea? That matters because the Russos might be returning to Marvel partly because they haven't found success elsewhere, and Marvel, facing its own struggles, desperately needed their billion-dollar boys back. Let's be honest, the MCU hasn't been the same since Endgame. Phase 4 and the early parts of Phase 5 have been inconsistent, if we're being kind. Sure, there were some great movies like Spider-Man: No Way Home and Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but also huge disappointments like, well, pretty much everything else. The box office numbers tell the story. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania underperformed with $463 million worldwide. That's a massive drop from earlier MCU entries. The Marvels became the lowest-grossing MCU film ever with just $206 million globally. Eternals, directed by Oscar winner Chloe Zhao, but not exactly lighting the Academy on fire, was panned by both fans and critics. On the Disney Plus side, shows like She-Hulk: Attorney at Law and Secret Invasion got mixed to negative reactions, with the latter being particularly criticized for bad writing and even worse execution, despite its stellar cast. But the biggest blow came from behind the scenes. Marvel's original plan for Phases 5 and 6 centered around Jonathan Majors' Kang the Conqueror as the next Thanos-level threat. Avengers 5 was the Kang Dynasty and was supposed to be helmed by the maker of one of the other better post-Endgame MCU movies, Shang-Chi filmmaker Destin Daniel Cretton. Then, Majors, it turned out, was a major problem. He was convicted of assault and harassment in December 2023, so Marvel fired him. Suddenly, they didn't have a Kang. The studio's carefully laid plans for the multiverse saga were thrown into chaos. Cretton left the project, and Marvel needed to think of something fast. And right then, McFeely had an idea. It's a miracle. This lucky timing makes the return of the Russo brothers look less like a creative choice and more like Marvel in panic mode, desperately reaching for a Russo-shaped comfort blanket. Marvel needed something big, really big, to regain audience confidence and excitement. And what's bigger than bringing back the directors of your most successful films? Maybe also bringing back your most beloved actor. Robert Downey Jr.'s return to the MCU was a big shock. While the Russos said they were almost definitely out, Downey Jr. was adamant on the subject. No more MCU for him, ever. Then there he was, taking off his mask in a big green Doctor Doom cloak, both puzzling and exciting fans all over the world. But why Doctor Doom rather than Tony Stark? Downey's portrayal of Tony Stark/Iron Man was the cornerstone of the MCU for over a decade. Iron Man launched the MCU. If it hadn't been a success, the MCU wouldn't have happened, and I think we can all agree that Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark was a big part of that success. Then, his character's sacrifice in Endgame provided an emotional conclusion to the Infinity Saga that resonated with audiences worldwide. It was, by all accounts, a perfect ending to Iron Man's journey. So why bring him back as a different character? And why Doctor Doom specifically? According to reports, it was Kevin Feige's idea to cast Downey as Doom. The Marvel Studios president apparently felt that Kang wasn't big enough, wasn't Thanos, as the saga's main villain, and that Doctor Doom was the right character to serve as the primary antagonist of the multiverse saga. He's not wrong. Doctor Doom is one of Marvel's greatest villains. He's a complex character who genuinely believes he's the hero of his own story. In the comics, Doom plays a central role in the Secret Wars storyline, ruling over Battleworld as God Emperor Doom. He's exactly the kind of three-dimensional bad guy the Russos excel at bringing to life. But there's also a big problem when it comes to recasting Downey. Will audiences be able to separate his new role from his iconic portrayal of Tony Stark? Or will the emotional impact of Stark's sacrifice in Endgame suddenly mean nothing? Will that nagging question, does anyone ever really die in the MCU, ruin it for some people? If they read the comics, they'd know that the answer is no. Nobody ever stays dead in the Marvel Universe, but there's something about doing it in the movies that feels a little cheap. Another question is, if they were, why did Downey Jr. come back? That's a lot easier to answer. Reports indicate that Downey could earn anything from $50 million per film with potential bonuses that could double that amount. The Russo brothers are also reportedly earning $40 million each per film, so it obviously wasn't just an idea, or the lack of interest in their non-Marvel movies that got them back. $130 million per move on just the directors and the main villain is an enormous financial commitment from Marvel. They seem to be betting the house on this reunion revitalizing the franchise. If reports are true, there's going to be something different about Doomsday when compared to Infinity War and Endgame. Joe Russo said that the greatest thing that ever happened is we got to get immersed in a 20-movie arc and see an ending to that arc. What's compelling about these two new Avengers movies is they're a beginning. It's a new beginning. We told an ending story with Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, and now we're going to tell a beginning story. That's crucial. They aren't going to try and top Endgame, which would be nearly impossible, or repeat it. Instead, the plan is to use Doomsday and Secret Wars as the foundation for whatever comes next in Phase 7 of the MCU. Kevin Feige has hinted that Phase 7 will be dominated by the X-Men, and that Secret Wars really leads into a new age of mutants. Doomsday and Secret Wars are going to be a transition point, using the multiverse concept to reset aspects of the MCU and introduce the X-Men as central players going forward. The casting for Avengers Doomsday makes this likely. Marvel has announced Patrick Stewart as Professor X, Ian McKellen as Magneto, Kelsey Grammer as Beast, Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler, Rebecca Romijn as Mystique, James Marsden as Cyclops, and Channing Tatum, last seen in Deadpool and Wolverine, another of the better post-Endgame movies, as Gambit. As I said in an earlier video, they're probably going to include elements of a classic Avengers vs. X-Men storyline, potentially bringing together characters from different universes before establishing a new, single MCU going forward. That's if the Russos get their way. Despite the excitement surrounding the Russos' return, apparently Kevin Feige isn't 100% confident with the new direction. According to industry insider Daniel Richtman, Feige worries about how averagely Russo's post-MCU movies have done, and is praying that Endgame and Captain America 2 and 3 weren't lightning in a bottle. Feige plans to be way more hands-on than ever with the production of Doomsday and Secret Wars to ensure quality control. This suggests that while Marvel has confidence in the Russo brothers' abilities within the MCU framework, there may be some caution about giving them complete creative freedom. Is a producer getting involved with the directing ever a good thing? If some of the past MCU directors like Taika Waititi are to be believed, the answer is no. Release the Waititi cut. The dynamic between Feige and the Russos will be fascinating to watch. The Russos have earned significant creative capital with their previous MCU successes, but Feige is ultimately responsible for the overall direction of the franchise, which is even more important if reports that he'll be leaving after these movies are true. He'll want to go out with a multi-billion-dollar bang. How much freedom will the directors have to execute their vision? And how much will Feige intervene to ensure these films align with his broader plans for the MCU? It's hard to say. One bit of good news is McFeely. He co-wrote all 4 of the Russos' previous Marvel films, and that suggests there will be some kind of continuity and quality in the scripts at least. Michael Waldron, who wrote Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and created the Loki series, another of the better post-Endgame outings, is also helping. Waldron had a lot to do with the original MCU multiverse concept, so I guess getting that straight is his role in the team. So the big question, can Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars actually save the MCU? The answer, I think, is maybe. On one hand, the Russo brothers and Robert Downey Jr. coming back is a powerful statement of intent from Marvel. It shows they're willing to invest hundreds of millions into the talent that's proven successful in the past. The combined box office power of the Russos and Downey is undeniable, and their return has already generated significant buzz. On the other hand, there's a risk that this move comes across as Marvel retreating to safe territory rather than pushing the franchise forward. The MCU's recent struggles aren't just about box office numbers, they're about a perceived lack of direction and purpose in the post-Endgame era. Everything seems scattered and messy, maybe because there was just too much content, or because Feige wasn't able to keep the train on the rails the same way he could back when there were just 2 movies a year. Simply bringing back successful directors and actors won't necessarily solve those deeper issues. There's also the question of whether the Russos can recapture the magic of their previous Marvel films. The MCU is different now. The characters have already traveled the multiverse with varying degrees of success, and the number of metahumans has exploded beyond the half dozen or so it had when the Russos started. Can they do something fresh while still delivering the character-driven storytelling that made their previous films so successful? As I mentioned before, the casting of Downey as Dr. Doom might also backfire. It's a bold choice that could result in a fascinating new villain for the MCU, but it also risks making Tony Stark's death mean nothing. The success of Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars will depend on whether they can balance nostalgia with innovation, honoring what made the MCU mostly great pre-Endgame while finding a new path forward. What's clear is that these films are a pivotal moment for the MCU. If they succeed, they could reinvigorate the franchise and set it up for another decade of success. If they fail, the golden age of Marvel is over. Personally, I'm cautiously optimistic. The Russos have proven they understand what makes the MCU work 4 times. They balance complex narratives, character development, and spectacle better than almost anyone else who's worked at the MCU. And that's exactly what Marvel needs right now. And Robert Downey Jr. is an amazing actor. If anyone can make you forget he was Tony Stark, he can. I've actually taken it a step further and cracked exactly what's going to happen in Avengers Doomsday, so click here.